Samsung dominates the Android space, so when it comes out with a flagship smartphone, the world takes notice. However, in most cases, its spring flagship, known as the Galaxy S, always looks pretty much the same. As you might guess, the Galaxy S5 is, well, the 5th generation device in that series. Compared to the S4, it's a little larger, with squared corners, dimpled back, and waterproof casing. But still, there's no mistaking that it's a Samsung Galaxy S phone. All told, it's an inoffensive looking device overall. Its leather-like back is in many ways modeled after the Galaxy Note 3, but this one does away with the stitching and the other skeuomorphic design bits. Unless you count the dimples, nothing about this phone really stands out in a way that gets people's attention. The design itself may not catch your eye, but its features will. It's got a solid 5.1-inch 1080p display, state-of-the-art processor, pretty decent sized battery, 16 megapixel rear camera, and 2 megapixel front-facing camera for all those selfies. It comes with either 16 or 32 gigs of internal space depending on which you choose, along with a microSD slot for expanded storage, up to 128 gigs. The layout is exactly the same as other Galaxy phones, although the USB 3.0 port on the bottom can now be sealed up by a plastic tab, and this helps ensure that you don't get water inside. The phone's IP67 certified, which means it can be submerged in water for a limited time. The GS5 comes with a fingerprint scanner built into the home button. Now, before you even say it, we know. We've seen this before in the iPhone 5S. This one's a little different in that you swipe your finger across the button to get it to register your print, whereas the iPhone just lets your finger rest. We spend a lot of good time with both, and we have to admit, the iPhone's version is faster and it's more accurate. On the S5, for example, it often took multiple attempts before it recognized our fingerprints. It's not to say that doesn't happen with the Touch ID from time to time, but usually it's more the exception rather than the rule. With the S5, however, it seems to be about half and half. At least the S5 has the right idea in how it takes advantage of those fingerprints. You can use it to secure private data and make payments through PayPal, in addition to the standard practice of unlocking your phone. There's always a chance that more functionality will come down the road, but first it has to improve the actual scanner before that happens. It also comes with a heart rate monitor, which is part of Samsung's S Health experience. In a nutshell, anytime you feel the need, you can get your pulse measured, and it goes into a handy log so you can keep track of how you're doing. The same monitor is also built into Samsung's Gear watches for even more integration. The sensor is awkwardly positioned next to the flash on the back of the phone, so you have to find just the right spot to make sure it can read your pulse. Oh, and if you're not looking closely enough, you might mistake the camera lens for the heart rate monitor. Just saying. In terms of software, Samsung unsurprisingly uses TouchWiz UI. This is just like it always does, but this time it looks a little different. It's more toned down, and it uses a flatter design than what we're used to seeing from Samsung. And circles are much more prominent, versus tabs, which are no longer used for the most part. Anyone upgrading from an older Samsung device probably won't have to worry about a learning curve. Yet, it still looks more modern than nearly every previous version we've ever played with. What's interesting to us is the fact that outside of the fingerprint scanner and the heart rate monitor, Samsung's philosophy of cramming dozens of smart features into one phone is pretty much a thing of the past. Now okay, there are still a few new additions, but they're a lot more low-key than what we're used to seeing with Samsung. The S5 has a Snapdragon 801 chip inside, which means it's state-of-the-art for smartphones right now. We must admit, it just didn't feel as snappy as we were expecting. On several occasions, it either stalled or completely froze on us when it was playing games with lots of graphics, such as Dead Trigger or Asphalt. Otherwise, it works totally fine, but anytime we transition to different parts of TouchWiz, say My Magazine or the recent apps menu, there was a noticeable delay. We have a feeling that many of our concerns with the phone's performance have nothing to do with the phone itself, but rather are a consequence of Samsung's customizations. At least the battery's pretty good though, but overall we didn't have a problem making it through the course of a day and the evening. If you use the phone moderately, you should be able to squeeze the better part of a second day in. And if you find yourself running low on power and no way to get to any sort of electricity, the phone features an ultra power saving mode which shuts nearly everything off except for the bare essentials. And what this does is it extends out the battery life for quite some time. There's nothing terribly exciting about the Galaxy S5, but hey, this is par for the course for Samsung. I mean, look at the last few Galaxy S flagships, which to us felt exactly the same way. Now that we've had a chance to pit the GS5 against the HTC One M8, which is the other top-of-the-line Android phone hitting the market right now, we've got to admit that the M8 is the more exciting of the two. That's not to say that it's not going to be an overall very good phone to have, but in terms of overall pizzazz, The HTC One beats the Samsung in this case. But still, especially if you've been a fan of Samsung in the past, you really can't go wrong with the Galaxy S5. Still a very good overall phone, as long as you don't have to rely on the fingerprint scanner.
Amazon announced the Fire TV, their streaming media box. So essentially, this thing is the Apple TV, but for people who really love their Prime subscription, right?